Welcome to the Heart-Centered Sales Leader podcast on webtalkradio.net. I'm your Heart-Centered Sales Leader and, of course, host Connie Whitman. Now, I hope every week as you tune in and you listen to the show that obviously you feel my passion, especially for the topic around sales. And more importantly, this show for me is helping us change our mindset from that word sales being icky and pushy and sleazy to really coming from that place of care, love, and respect. So I'm on the movement. I'm on a mission. I hope you come and join me as we play on the podcast to really help you shift your mindset away from that icky feeling. Now, if you're loving the show, which of course I hope you are, please go to Apple Podcast, or if you're a YouTube user, just rate the show, write a real short review, tell me that you love me, which I love to read, and of course, subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Now, today, I want to start with my motivational quote, which is by Lamott. And Anne says, "Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you." Burnout is real and can affect just so many areas of our lives, right? How do you reach that point of exhaustion and burnout? Maybe more importantly is how can you avoid reaching burnout when it's just on the rise around the world? While we often point to external circumstances like the demands or the culture of our jobs, so much of what leads to burnout is the way we think about those circumstances and our beliefs about ourselves. Now, in the next half hour, you're actually going to find out how your mind contributes to your exhaustion and what you can do to turn it around. My guest is amazing. It's Dr. Sharon Grossman. Now, Dr. Sharon is the author of the international best-selling book, The 7E Solution to Burnout, Transforming High Achievers from Exhausted to Extraordinary. She is a burnout expert who has taken her background in psychology and 2 decades of experience in the field of and has dedicated herself to helping high achievers who are struggling with anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout to live their best life. Her work is all about empowering you to take back control of your mind. So please help me welcome the amazing Dr. Sharon Grossman. So Sharon, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. What a nice introduction.
Yes. You know, what's funny is when I'm on podcasts or shows or summits, where you speak and they read your creds, right? Your bio. Oftentimes I think, I'd hire me. Great, right?
Like, I'm pretty good.
I'm pretty darn good. The other thing I wanted to comment on, which I giggled at, 2 decades, 20 years. You don't look like you've been, in business, in psychology, or working for 20 years. So, that's such a good feeling, right? When you appear young, even though we have all these, detailed credentials. Now, I think the word burnout, everybody can absolutely relate to that, especially after 2020 and COVID. I think we all hit a level of burnout and just kind of worn out, feeling worn out, call it burnout, exhaustion, whatever you want. But we've all heard the word burnout. I just want to make sure that we are really all talking from that same framework. So what is burnout? How does it manifest? And how can people know when they're in it or that they are in it? So let's kind of define that for everybody.
Yeah, so I'm going to break it down. So I would say to start off, everybody knows what stress is. And so burnout is basically the accumulation of stress over time. And it manifests a little bit differently. So it starts out as this stress that happens day in, day out, and it's kind of layer upon layer upon layer, but you start to notice that you're burned out when you have certain symptoms of like exhaustion, right? And what that means is that you just feel like you're dragging yourself in it. It's mentally hard for you to focus. So it's a little bit different than how we would think about, like, if I just ran a marathon and I was exhausted, right? That would be physical exhaustion. And what we see with burnout more so is a mental exhaustion. I just can't do it. I just have like nothing more to give, that kind of idea. And if we really look at what is stress, which is contributing to this burnout, stress, what we know, is really about perception, right? So, and that can surprise some people, but if you think about a situation, like even just COVID, right? COVID is something that we've all been facing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously we know that a lot of people are very stressed out, are very anxious, are very overwhelmed by the circumstances of having COVID right now. And would you say, Connie, from your experience over the last, 8, 9, 10 months, that you've come across anybody who hasn't felt that way?
Everybody has felt it, and not even just in the United States and, maybe Canada, our sisters north of us, but I think across the world. I mean, I talk to people in Ireland and Germany, and everybody is almost stuck talking about COVID all the time, right?
Yeah, well, sure. They're talking about COVID, but the question is, do they feel stressed out?
I think
about
so.
it?
I think so.
Yeah. So what I would say is this. Typically, when we are faced with something like this, it is challenging. But so much of how we feel about it is a result of how we think about it. Okay? And you can see, when COVID first started, we saw people really kind of freaking out. And they said, I don't know how long this is going to take. And so there's a lot of anxiety about the uncertainty of the situation. And then, as it progressed, it became other things. It became like, I'm so sick of staying home. I'm so sick of not being able to see my friends. I'm lonely. Like all these things started to transpire, right? But I also have seen people who have pivoted their business and they've been thriving, and people who have said, because my kids are now at home, yes, it's like challenging on the one hand, but it's also like I feel like I'm spending more time with them, and I'm seeing opportunities in this that I didn't have before. I just spoke to one client last week who was saying how, we started the conversation, and I said to her, you kind of sound burned out. What's going on? And she said, I'm burned out on COVID. And when we dug a little bit, right, I asked her, listen, given the fact that we are in this situation, how do you want to feel?
Good question.
And that's a very powerful question for people, because you start to see that you have a choice in this. Okay. And so she said, she didn't exactly answer it directly. She kind of was focused more on what she would like to be doing differently. Okay. So she's focusing more on the behavior. But what she said was, given the fact that I don't have to commute to work right now, she's working from home, I would like to spend more quality time with my daughter. Something she doesn't have as much time to do when she's commuting.
Sure.
And so she was able to go from focusing on this COVID thing that is like so stressful and so limiting, and I'm so sick of it, I'm burned out on this thing, to, well, where's the opportunity in this, right? What can you focus on that would make it more of a quality experience? And she said, spending more time with my daughter. Okay. And so ultimately what it boils down to, and I think this is important, especially because, as you said, so many people are struggling with this, is to really ask yourself, look, I'm not going to change COVID, right? I'm not going to wish it away.
That's right.
But given that this is happening, how do I want to feel? Right. And then you've got to reverse engineer it. So if you said, so I'm going to ask you, Connie, how do you want to feel about COVID?
So can I answer? Well, let me answer it this way, because for me, I see COVID as tremendous opportunity. So and listen, let me just preface this, right? I know people have lost loved ones. COVID is real. COVID has caused deaths that, perhaps maybe wouldn't have happened, right? So I'm not minimizing the distress of loss, okay? For me, my son came home from college and he was working from here. So right from the beginning, Sharon, we were spending more time together at night because we weren't commuting. He was home, and we would have 2-hour dinners where usually when it wasn't COVID and he was home from college, they had jobs, or he'd be going to his girlfriend's, and it was run, rush, do, I have to go see my parents. I have to go here, I have to go there. And all of a sudden, we couldn't do any of those things. So I truly, right out of the gate, embraced that shift, because I had this time that I know, it's fleeting, because my kids are getting older. They're going to be on their own soon. And not that I ever wish time away, but I really embraced it. The other thing was, I wasn't commuting and running around like a chicken without a head, where it was pedal to the metal, pedal to the metal. Especially, as a business owner, you got to perform. Otherwise, we don't work, we don't get paid. So all of a sudden, it was, you can't work. You're done. And as stressful as it was, not having the financial well-being of knowing that those that I was going to get paid by my clients, everything stopped. I thought, what do I need to learn? So I don't know if I'm a freak, because I really have to be honest. I did not stress over COVID. I stress because I have elderly parents, and the concern of, you can't get COVID, you can't expose them. We have to be hyper, vigilant. I can control me, my husband, the kids. We were very aware of all of the CDC guidelines. We followed everything because I have elderly parents, right? So I'm not saying that I was, what's the word, in denial. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm the type of person who can't control it. I can't worry about it, because that will make me insane. I just won't sleep. I won't function. So I immediately, I don't know if I'm a hopeless optimist, Sharon, but I really started to look at what were the benefits. And really, for me, with this downtime, what did I need to learn to increase my abilities now that I had this new opportunity? Because I was working, 7 days a week like a crazy person. The good news is clients wanted me. You don't say no. You ride the wave, and I love my clients. It forced me to reevaluate where I was spending my time and what I needed to learn. So for me, I really found it as a blessing. And I don't know if that's weird. That was the honest truth of how I responded to COVID last year. So I think I'm a freak. I don't know.
I'm hearing a lot of judgment, Connie.
About myself, right? Like I'm a lunatic, right?
Yeah, no, not a freak. I think what's so beautiful about what you shared is that it exemplifies a growth mindset. And that's essentially what I'm recommending for people to adapt to, right? This is what it is at this point. We have to deal with certain restrictions, and you can tune into this radio station with this stress mentality, and I've had people say, I just want things to go back to the way they were. And it's so funny to me, because I'm like, when kind of like you're describing before, you were working so hard and you were spending so much time on commuting and all this stuff, and complaining about how you never have time for yourself and how tired you are. And people so quickly forget that. And we're so resistant to change that we're like resisting the situation rather than embracing it the way you described. And I think when you embrace it, you win, because it's here either way. And so you can fight yourself, and you can fight the situation and kind of wish it away and then be unsuccessful and feel frustrated. Or you can say, how do I make the best of this situation? And then just flow. And I think that's a choice that we all have. And the more that we can see that we have these kinds of choices, the more that we thrive and the less that we burn out, right? So that's really like the big secret, is that you always have a choice.
Yeah.
And it's just a mindset game.
Yeah. And I see, I agree with that. But you have people that say to you, I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. Or I didn't have a choice. So what are you going to do? And when people say that to me, and I go, well, you did have a choice. You chose, you always have, but you chose not to act. That was a choice. That was a choice you made. When you choose to act, right? That's a choice. Whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, doesn't matter. You always have a choice in the situation. So, and the other thing, I don't know if you've heard this too with the new year, right? Oh, I can't wait for 2021. So New Year's Eve, my kids were with friends, whatever, right? And safe again with family, like one other person kind of thing. So again, using good judgment. But I said to my husband, we had a quiet moment, and I go, I keep laughing. Everybody keeps saying, I can't wait for 2021. Good riddance 2020. Tomorrow we wake up, COVID's still going to be here. The lockdown is still going to be the lot. Like, what's changing overnight just because we move forward, from 2020 to 2021? We were giggling about it. But really, everybody, good riddance 2020. Why good riddance 2020? Nothing's changed unless you change your mindset. Maybe now that 2020 is gone and you're thinking, I can't worry about this anymore. I have to move on with my life. Then good riddance 2020 that you're able to shift whatever your paradigm of thinking is. But and it's funny, Sharon, I don't know, maybe I get this from my dad, but why worry about something you have absolutely zero control over? If I don't have control, you got to put it on ignore, because there are many things that I can control, right, in my life. And that's what I should be focusing my energy on. So I don't know. That's just, and I think I learned that from my dad. So again, I think it's a learned behavior just from how I was raised. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I teach that actually as one of the refocusing techniques is ask yourself, when you're facing a situation, is this something that I have control over? If it is, then, do whatever it is you need to do to make it the way you want it to be. But if not, then the only thing left to do is to just accept it, because otherwise you're fighting an uphill battle. You're never going to win, And so I think it is really wise to ask yourself these powerful questions so that you can reframe things, so that you can refocus your mind, and you'll be so much happier for it. And the thing that we always have control over is not the situation per se, but it's how we interpret that situation, what we do with that situation, right? So you can have COVID and say to yourself, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever, and I miss everybody. And all those things can be true, but focusing on them does you no good, because then you feel depressed and you feel sorry for yourself. You feel like a victim. You feel helpless. Yeah. Right? You're feeling frustrated, and you're like upset. You're sad. All of these things, like, do you really want to feel that way? You can, absolutely. Just focus on all the things that are going wrong right now, Or you can ask yourself, like, how do I want to feel? Right? How do I want to feel? I want to feel calm. Like, it doesn't have to be Pollyanna-ish. It doesn't have to be like, I want to feel amazing, like, it's like, you don't have to be like, woo, COVID, It doesn't have to be crazy like that. But it has to be like, what about going from negative to neutral?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What would it take for you to feel neutral about COVID? How would you have to think about it in order to get there? And by identifying that thought, you're kind of reverse engineering what you need to focus your mind on in order to produce that result in your life.
But we have a control. And I think that's the thing that people feel, it's out of my control, which, yes, COVID is out of our control, right? When the vaccines come.
They're focusing on the wrong
it's
thing.
exactly right.
Yes. So what the takeaway here is, you're not to focus on changing the circumstance.
That's right.
And that goes back to when we talked about burnout and like the demands of your job and the culture and your boss and all the things that you are attributing to your burnout. That's not the thing to focus on. The thing to focus on, and I see this a lot actually in the literature, and like when I was doing all this research on burnout, is so much of it is on changing the organization. And there's like good reason to do that, but you as an employee, you don't have the power to do that.
Absolutely.
So you're going to wait around for them to change the organization. Good luck.
Absolutely.
Who knows? That can take forever. And what's going to happen to you in the meantime is you're going to go down this crazy roller coaster.
Absolutely.
So a better use of your resources is to focus on you, right? How can I be in this situation and not feel this way? I have to change the way that I think about it.
That's right.
That's what it boils down to. And yes, it is a challenging exercise, but it's possible. And that's exactly what I teach people to do, because there's so much power in that.
Yeah.
In seeing that you have a choice, that you're not a victim of your circumstances, that, if you've done all this mind work and you're still not happy at your job, sure, go switch jobs, switch careers, do something different. You have that choice too. But I think ultimately you don't want to use every time you're unhappy in a situation, whether it's a relationship or a job, to go skipping around from partner to partner, or
right,
from job to job. You want to be able to work on yourself, because you are the common denominator in all of those situations. Yeah. Right? So don't run away from yourself. Your mind is contributing to how you feel. And so take control of your mind, and that's going to make a big difference in the quality of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it starts with you. Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. So I want to just share with everybody. So my book ESP, quick transition. But I want to comment on something you said and really why I'm sharing the book right now, just because the conversation is spot on. I share stories in the book, Sharon, about my career, right, in sales and how and here's the book, guys. Please go to Amazon. Kindle version, I think, is $6.99. But I share my 7-step sales process to help you change your paradigm of thinking of sales of this icky, sleazy thing. Additionally, I do share stories, and this is why I mentioned the book right now. Early in my career, I was in my 20s and I worked for a credit company, and I basically increased, it was a car company, automobile company, and I increased the lease agreements that were coming in from 0. They didn't even know what a lease agreement was. I was reaching out to all the dealerships saying, hey, this client, he's a business owner. Instead of doing a retail deal, you should do lease. You're going to save him money. He can write it off on taxes. So I started teaching all of these dealers. We went from 0 applications to about like 1,000 a month. I mean, it was ridiculous. So here, again, I didn't know I was selling. I was teaching, right? So a sales position came over to be the liaison with all the dealerships. And I went to my, the boss of the whole organization. And I said, hey, look at what I've done. I think I'm really good at the sales thing. Who knew I was selling? I think they respect me. The dealers reach out to me with questions. I've built these nice relationships. And he said, you're a girl. They'll never let me promote you. He believed I could do the job. He believed I would do an exemplary job. But because it was a male-dominated industry, I put in air quotes for those listening on Apple Podcast. He said, you're a girl, Connie. They'll never let me promote you. And he was wonderful because he said to me, here's the reality. You are beyond what this company can do for you. Get your resume together. And he says, you could go on interviews. He says, you can actually send anybody that, needs like a verbal, Connie's great kind of thing. He says, you give them my number, my personal number, and I'll speak to them. So here I was blessed because he looked out for me. He was a good guy, right? But on the same token, I took his advice and I thought, if I've outgrown the company, why am I staying here? I have more to do. So it's a choice, right? I could have easily, because I loved the people I worked with. I loved the job. I loved working with the dealerships and everything. I could have easily, Sharon had said, I'm going to stay. So the reason I'm sharing the story, guys, is that's one of the stories in my book to help you change your mindset. I'm not a psychologist like my wonderful Dr. Sharon here. But the idea is life has choices. You have to make those choices. And they happen more frequently than you think. I think anyway.
All the time.
Right?
All the time.
Yeah, we just have to be aware and see those pivotal moments, I think. Do me a favor, Sharon. Can you share some examples of beliefs that you believe and that you've really seen in your experience, in psychology, about those self-perpetuating patterns that we keep contributing to our own demise, but really that kind of leads to that burnout? And you said it before, you're the common denominator in relationships and jobs, going job hunting or partner hunting. It all leads to that burnout. Can you give us some examples? I think people can relate to that.
Yeah, so a really good example is somebody who believes that they have to do things perfectly. Okay, so you have a lot of perfectionism, and if you really look at what perfectionism is, it's an overcompensation for a belief that you are not enough. Right. So I feel like I'm not enough. So then the work that I do has to be over the top just to make sure that I'm okay. Just to balance it out. Okay. So what happens is you see people in the workplace who are working really hard, really diligently on quality, but at the same time, they're, if you're focusing so much on one thing that you're doing, there's this buildup of other tasks that you're just never going to get to because you're spending inordinate amount of time on this one thing. And so what happens is then you can feel really proud about this one thing that you did well, but then you start feeling really stressed out about how am I ever going to do those 20 other things, right? And so part of burnout can happen when you aren't allocating your time well to things, and it comes from that place of it has to be a certain way. It's like it gives you this sense of control of like, I'm doing this great work, and then I'll get recognized, and then I'll feel like I'm enough, right? But then it very well kind of sabotages what you're trying to do, because if you're not doing the other 20 things well, right, because you've procrastinated on those, then you actually like never arrive, and the thing about it is like, because perfection doesn't even really exist in the world,
Absolutely,
like, it's kind of an illusion.
Yeah.
Then they're always kind of in this stage of, I'm almost there, it's almost there, it's almost perfect, like I still need another iteration, and so you're never done. You're always feeling like whatever you do, it's really a reflection of, I'm not quite good enough, and the thing that I do therefore is not quite perfect. Yes. So I think so much of it has to do with your belief system, and so that perpetuates these patterns of behavior, and because we engage with our work in a certain way, it can create this burnout, right? When I'm like so stressed because I got so much piled up, I have no idea how I'm ever going to get to it all, and then now I'm feeling like this job is too much for me, right? And now I can say, oh, my job's really demanding. But in fact, like, if you had a different way of engaging with your work, maybe you would be able to get the things done. So a lot of it is like quantity over quality, right?
Yep.
And so, one of the things that I try to teach perfectionists is to have more of that balance of, can I accomplish more things at a lower level of quality?
Yeah.
Like, instead of aiming for perfection, if you can like lower the bar to something that's more reasonable, you'll be able to get more stuff done. And then if you still have time left over, go back in and perfect as much as you want, but don't do it at the expense of all of the 20 things that are on your desk.
Yeah. Yeah. And business, it's the law of diminishing returns in essence, right? You reach a point where, listen, I believe good is the enemy of great. And when things are good, people, things are good. And then we don't develop ourselves. To me, good is the enemy of great in that situation. But in business, if you keep, it's got to be better. I got to reiterate. At some point, you have to say, it's good enough. I got to move on. Otherwise, I'm not going to make more money. I'm not going to find that next client. I'm not going to be able to do more because I'm stuck here. So it's the law of diminishing returns is exactly what you're talking about. And I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. Now, I want to talk about your book for a minute. We have a few more minutes. I giggled because you have the 7th step. Mine is the 7th step too. So I think that when we can provide steps for people, it's tangible, right? So it's easy to understand, and then I can implement one step at a time. So it's almost like baby steps instead of getting from point A to point Z. You have these little, milestones. So I love the 7 steps. Can you, in your outline, you have the 7-step solution to burnout. How can one of your steps help someone who's stuck in that perpetual pattern, like you just said? I have to do it. I have to reiterate. It's got to be perfect. Like, how do they break out of that?
Well, I think the first step, and this is really like my first solution, is always self-awareness, right? A lot of times we're stuck in these patterns because of our belief system, and as you said, we don't see that we have a choice. We've always done it this way. We can't see any other way of doing things. What we do notice is that we have the same results over and over again, and we don't understand why. So I think the first step is to understand what's contributing to your results. And if you can see that, okay, the behavior that I'm doing is the same. And the reason I do this thing the same way all the time is because I feel a certain way. And, with the example of perfectionism, what we talked about is the feeling is there's a fear, right? There's a fear of not doing good enough work. There's a fear of not being perfect. There's a fear of not being enough. And that stems from our thinking, right? And so we have this belief that, we're inadequate in some way. And so many people walk around with this. It's so common. So if you're one of those people, just know that it's totally normal. Like, It is so incredibly like common in this culture to have that belief. Like, so everybody's walking around with this sense of inadequacy and worry about people finding out, and this imposter syndrome on some level.
Definitely.
Right? It's
Sure.
so common, which is why I'm talking about it, because I see it like with so many of my clients. And to know that it's not like if you've felt this way your whole life, and if you've believed that about yourself your whole life, that you can't change it, right? So the first step to any sort of change is first and foremost to have that awareness of like, what is fueling my pattern? What is that belief? If I understand that there's this sequence of events that's happening where, I have a belief that is causing me to think about things in a certain way, which is creating, fear and this desire to overcompensate for that, then I'm going to be stuck doing this thing in the same way all the time.
Yes.
I have to change my belief in order to change my perfectionism. I have to work on my mindset in order to overcome that fear.
Yes.
And then everything's going to change, right? So we have to start with the mind. We have to start with that awareness of like what is happening. And then you can start to do things in a much more intentional way.
Sure.
And that's kind of, to me, like that's where it all starts. And that's why when I've got these like 7E solution steps, it's really, the first one is emotional intelligence, right? So, and part of emotional intelligence, the kind of foundation of that is self-awareness.
And self-love to some extent, right? I would think. Emotional intelligence, it's like, okay, yes, we have to be emotionally intelligent with everyone that we encounter in our life, but I could treat myself like crap, right? I did it before. You said, I hear a lot of judgment. Maybe I'm crazy, right? Because if people maybe this is the fear, right? And I mean, I don't know, I'm just talking out loud, but people listening, they're like, she's not worried about COVID and I'm not special, right? So immediately I think, well, I'm not special. I'm just sharing how I approached it. So I have to justify where I came from, because people listening might think, well, this one's out of her mind. So, right, we judge ourselves before you could judge me, right, or comment on my craziness.
Well, that's exactly right.
Right.
So when we have this fear of like how other people are going to perceive us, then we do the crazy things of like judge ourselves first. So that if I judge myself first, then you can't hurt me.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So it's a defense mechanism. And so we have all these things kind of built into our psyche to keep us alive, to keep us, in this
supposedly safe
in this world.
Right.
And while it is kind of this automated process, I think that the more that you understand about how the mind works, and the more that you start to come in and say like, wait a minute, that's how this works on a subconscious level, but on a conscious level, I can have more power. I can be intentional. I can actually reverse engineer this. And I do that by asking really powerful questions, or by focusing my mind on like, what is the opportunity, or what are the positives here? Or how can I get to that neutral place like we talked about? So there's so many different skills that I teach people to really reverse this phenomenon of burnout and to prevent it from happening. And so I really hope that people will pick up the book and follow the steps. And it does come with a workbook so that you can really coach yourself on this process.
I love it. To everybody, for everybody, Sharon, what's the name of the book?
So it's the 7E solution to burnout. Transforming High Achievers from Exhausted to Extraordinary. And it's available on Amazon, but I also have a little page for it online as well. So if you want to get more information about everything that's included in the book, go to 7esolution.com. I really want to encourage people to purchase it as a gift for your colleagues, for your friends, because oftentimes we see burnout in other people before they see it in themselves.
Love it.
And what I've done is I've created an incentive program for you to do that. So if you go to 7esolution.com, you can see all the bonus coaching videos that you can get from me for copies that you gift out to your loved ones. So I really hope to spread this message of burnout being something that you can recover from and that you can prevent moving forward.
I love it. And it's a new year, so great time to read these powerful books that, again, for ourselves. But I love that idea of giving it to someone, because we do see, it's easier to see someone else's problems than go internally and see your own, right? There's so much clarity because you're not in the throes of the emotional angst, right? So it's 7, the number 7, not SEVEN, right?
Number 7. E as an elephant. Solutions to burnout, and the website is 7esolution.com.
7E Solution. I just wrote it down. 7E Solution, not plural. Singular. Yep. Okay. So guys, I will post that 7esolution.com on the show notes, so you guys could find Sharon easy peasy and all that information that she just shared. That will be on there for you to start your journey. Buy the book. She's incenting you to share it with your peeps, which I think is real important. If you see something and you can help someone, we got to do it. That's how I think we grow together as well, is by sharing these kinds of information or pieces of information that you heard, and maybe your friend, sister, brother, hasn't listened to the show yet, but hopefully you're sharing the show with them too. Also, Sharon, if they do have a question, can they email you? If they have a question directly that you might be able to answer?
Absolutely. So if they go to my website, which is drsharongrossman.com, there's an opportunity there to contact me. And Wonderful. They can even schedule a breakthrough session with me, which is free. So all the information is on my website.
So I will post both, guys. I'm going to put drsharongrossman.com if you want to connect with Sharon, and 7esolutions.com for all of that cool stuff that Sharon shared with us. Sharon, thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate it. I think this is such an important topic. It's a really good way to start, the 2021 new behaviors to focus on. And I just love the 7 steps. Obviously, I love that, but I love that idea of starting with self, because I think oftentimes we deflect out and blame outside instead of, because really, right, we all know, I think it was Dr. Wayne Dyer said, if you change your thoughts, the things that you see in front of you change, or something along those lines. But it has to start with you. So we deflect, it's the world, I don't have a choice, and all these things that we started the show with. I just want to end, guys. We do have control. 7esolution.com might be the answer you've been looking for. Buy the book, share it with your peeps as well. And if you need more Connie in your life, which of course I hope you do, again, ESP, Easy Sales Process, 7 Steps to Sales Success. Go to my website, whitmanassociates.com. Everything's there. Like Sharon, I have a ton of free resources for you as well. How to contact me if you need my help with something. So whitmanassociates.com, best way to reach me. Sharon, once again, thank you so much. What a great conversation, great insight. I love the E for the enlightenment, that idea of that self-enlightenment. And I think we have control. I think we just have to take back control and be mindful of it, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what COVID is actually. It's a good exercise for us.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's making you slow down. It's making you appreciate all the little things that you would otherwise not have. And this is your choice right now. Is like, I can enjoy having that extra time with my son when he's home from college, or I can bitch and moan about how I don't have the things that I used to have, know? So it really is a mindful exercise for everybody. Perspective,
right? It's always about perspective, I think, too. So again, Sharon, thank you so much for being on. And for you, I hope you will join me weekly as we question, build, and discover together that sales, topics like this, like burnout, your professional life, whatever it is that you're going through, that my guests, myself, our stories, our ideas, our strategies, our books, all help you navigate that element of change so that you can grow your business, grow professionally, grow in your career, or whatever it is that you're looking to achieve, especially with the new year upon us. So thank you again, Sharon. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for tuning into the Heart-Centered Sales Leader podcast with me, your heart-centered sales leader and host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.net. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Hope you really open your mind to the client relationships, your self-relationship with yourself that are possible as you become the heart-centered sales leader you're destined to become. I'm excited and honored to have you on this journey with me, and I really hope you implement some of Sharon's ideas today of kind of go within before you go external. Thank you again, and thank you again, Sharon, for a great show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.